Dude, I got some fucking banana bread at work today, dude. Hell yeah.
How's my hair, by the way?
Hair looks great, man.
Right,
How's mine?
Looks good.
Yeah?
Looks good. Yeah, I like what you did with it.
Yeah. Well, it's, it takes me a long time to fix this shit.
I'm sure it does.
I used to spend so much time fixing my hair that I was like that girl that was like, I can't leave.
Right.
Like, my hair is a mess today. I can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
When I finally buzzed it off and was just like, the hell with it.
Like the freedom you have, right?
So much freedom.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, I could probably get on, what is it? What's the Rogaine or something like that? Because I have a little thinning in the front, but it's just like, at this point.
Did you shave it for thinning reasons?
Yeah, I did. I was like, I want to buzz this and see how it feels, and then go from there. And then I just liked it so much.
Yeah, I when I shower now, I see like the hair fall out into my hands, so that's something to look forward to.
Yeah. Well, see, now I can't see it because the hair's so small when it falls out.
Right. Yeah. That's a life hack right there.
Yeah, because it started falling out, and I was like, I would see it in the shower, and I'm just like, this is depressing.
It's so depressing.
So I'm like, I buzzed it
now. Yeah.
No more hair.
A good life hack is you don't see your hair falling out in the shower if you stop showering.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So I'm bath only from now on.
That's awesome. I heard this thing. I think it was yesterday on TikTok, where I think Dan Bilzerian was talking, and he was like, he heard of this story between Tommy Lee. Remember Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tommy Lee.
Yeah, I watched that video a million times.
Yeah. We had to learn.
Very inspiring.
Exactly. This is what life could be.
Yeah.
But
this can't be in the podcast.
But anyways,
we've already got
him and somebody else. It was another rocker. They're like, we're gonna see how long we can go. We can. The game was sleep with as many women as you can, but you can't take a shower for 30 days.
Oh wow! This is the game you played?
No, this is a game that Tommy Lee and some other rocker played.
Yeah.
That's got to be the most disgusting thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's pretty
out there.
You heard this on TikTok?
Yeah, on TikTok. They allow that. But what does TikTok not allow?
They don't allow something?
I feel like they don't. I feel like it's more kid-friendly than like Instagram.
So I thought TikTok, what are your thoughts on TikTok?
It's interesting, but like YouTube is always going to be something to like. TikTok is so short form.
Yeah,
like it's for younger people with like a short attention span.
Yeah,
and then also for people who like want quick information. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
but you'll never be able to like completely replace a YouTube long form conversation.
So I've been getting into TikTok a little bit because I'm not
sure you're not making whatever there's some out there. I'll find it.
But my fiance like downloaded it, and I was like really interested in it because it's kind of a new medium, right?
For sure. Yeah.
And at first I saw it and I was like, this is really stupid. This is literally just people dancing,
right?
This is like I'm just looking at white girls dancing to like old gangster rap. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
But then I started looking at like key things like mental health and it's really interesting. And now I feel that TikTok is really kind of a new paradigm in social media. And I think it's going to completely, I think Facebook and Instagram will ultimately have their place still, but I think it's really taking over their market share in a lot of ways. And it's really like the new way that people are communicating with each other. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, Instagram is like photos. The majority of it, right?
Yeah.
Is photos. You don't do photos on TikTok.
Right.
Yeah.
And the great thing about not doing photos is you're telling a story, right?
Right.
And I had a meeting today about kind of making more of a presence regarding mental health on TikTok. And kind of using that not as an advertising platform, but as an educational platform.
Dude, 100% I agree with that. There's a couple accounts that I follow that do that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's a psychologist who talks about ADHD.
Oh, really?
Everything ADHD.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. This older guy, just Yeah, that's pretty much ADHD and then OCD, right?
Why do you follow him?
Because I feel like a lot of people, especially me, were not diagnosed with that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just never saw a doctor for it.
Do you think you have ADHD?
I think I have some of it, but like I think everything's on a spectrum. I feel like.
Yeah.
And I've just realized that as long as I can name it, no matter like what end of the spectrum it's on, as long as I can name it and say, oh yeah, that's some type of ADHD,
right? I
can kind of like figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah.
But like for so long I was like, no, I don't have ADHD. I was never told I had it.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, well, I think from all this information, I probably do to some extent, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's why I follow it.
That makes sense. I have ADHD also, and when I was 20 years old, I was tested. This was like the second or third time I was tested for some reason. And the woman who was testing me told me these are the most severe adult ADHD scores I've ever seen in my life.
And you were how old?
20.
20.
Yeah.
Did you ever get tested when you were a kid?
I got tested when I was a kid.
Okay.
But it was like,
interesting.
So when I was a kid, it was like late 90s, early 2000s, like everyone kind of had ADHD. So then,
I remember
then
that.
It was kind of like no one had it, right? Because it's like, is this even real? Or are these doctors just like, peddling pills and whatnot? I think that was kind of the thought process. But looking back at my life, like I definitely had ADHD, and still to this day, this is like, I've dealt with like anxiety and depression and other kind of mental health stuff in the past, but ADHD is like the one thing that has stayed constant with me.
Okay, that's interesting.
That's like the thing that I've had to develop like a million different coping mechanisms to like deal with it. Yeah. And now I'm at the point where I think it's become a strength in a way, whereas, basically my entire life, it was kind of my biggest weakness and the main kind of like the main issue.
Pull that mic a little closer. Get intimate with that thing.
You
can pull it in there.
Yeah, be more aggressive with
it. Yeah. Got to show it who's boss here. But you said the whole of your life, you've dealt with it.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of like a superpower now because you kind of manage it.
I think so.
Is that what you think?
I think so, yeah. So basically, I was like I was kind of like the fuck up in school, right? Like I was like a C student. I was told the same thing by every single one of my teachers, which is basically like, you have so much potential, but you need to focus, or like.
So they actually saw potential.
They would see, somehow,
Jesus.
They would be like
new teachers.
They'd be like, you're bright, but you really need to like apply yourself. This was like the same thing from like 4th grade on.
Did that aggravate you?
Yeah,
because I've heard that from someone who is very, got great attributes, and they were like, "Oh God, I hated hearing that." And I'm like, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that, and on the one hand, it was nice hearing it because it's like, okay, at least I have potential. Like that's some feedback,
right?
That's not just like a grade,
yeah,
right? But on the other hand, it's like, I don't know how to apply myself. I'm like 7. I don't know how to focus.
Right. Yeah.
Like I need more instruction.
Did you have any like thing that you identified in at that age, or was it kind of just up in the air? You were 7. I just exist. Well, when I was younger, I like identified in wrestling very early, and so I feel like that helped me focus.
Yeah.
And everything was around wrestling because my dad was like, you got to get good grades to keep wrestling. And then wrestling's going to get you a scholarship, right? So that was the track that I was on. And I was like, oh, okay, so the grades have to be there for wrestling, so I'll focus for that.
So not really, but kind of. Like none of the things that I could focus and excel in had to do with school. So like, when I was 11, I like taught myself HTML, and I made this Dragon Ball Z website.
Oh my God, dude.
And it was pretty dope. It was called DragonBallCenter.com. So I don't own it anymore. But
that was it big? Because I feel like I at least visited that.
You may have.
Dude, I was a huge Dragon Ball Z fan.
You were probably on my web. I had like forums, like I had like message boards,
man,
and I had like
awesome.
people like hitting me up like, "Hey, can I work for you?" And I was like, "I don't know, I'm 12." You know?
Dang, dude.
So like, and that was like, you know, now like web development is like a whole thing, but back then it was like you just kind of teach yourself HTML and like kind of figure it out.
Dude, I couldn't teach myself that if I had a gun to my head.
Yeah. But I was like so motivated to just like talk about Dragon Ball Z with other people. That's kind of what ended up
So
happening.
Dragon Ball Z was the first.
That was what I got. That's like a thing that I got like really into.
Yeah. Thank God it wasn't Pokemon. That can come after.
I kind of had a phase.
I'm kidding.
I'm not
I've got
gonna
my
lie.
cards in the the folding books with
Oh,
the
you
plastic.
do?
Still got
Yeah.
them back home in North Carolina. Yeah.
Oh, dude, if my nephew knew that, he'd be
go
all
nuts.
over it. Yeah.
Dang,
Yeah.
man. So Dragon Ball Z kind of got you focused to build a website.
Yeah.
But then
yeah.
school was just like, this is boring as shit.
School, well, the problem with school was that like everything that you do, you're listening to other people talk at you.
Right.
Right. And so with ADHD, ADHD is always a disorder of sustained attention, right? So you're really good at switching focus from one thing to another thing to another thing.
Right.
But you're not good at sustaining focus at all.
Got
so
it.
what would happen in school is I would listen to someone lecture in algebra or whatever, and then I'd kind of zone out for a second, and then I'd be like, shit, I don't know what they're talking about anymore. And then like we've gone too far. And then I'm just kind of sitting there like listening to someone talk at me with no recollection of what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
Okay. And then
that makes sense.
And then there's also like an organization component to it. So I was a very disorganized student. Like
Yeah.
I couldn't get it together with like I don't know, some kids have like binders and stuff, and you know, they would like organize everything according to their classes. I was the kid who like stuck my homework in my backpack or like put it in my pocket.
Right.
And then I'd like lose it the next day and be like, oh, I can't remember what I was supposed to be doing.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense why that would like destroy your interest in a class. If like, oh, you're interested, you're listening to what they're saying, and then all of a sudden you drift off, and then you're like, oh shit, I'm so
Right.
far behind.
Right.
Like I give up.
But yeah, exactly. And it sucks. It's like it's a pretty painful experience to go through, because when you're a kid, like your only barometer for success in life is school,
Yeah.
right? Is your grades. And so to just continue to fail all
the
the
one
time,
thing.
I think really negatively impacts one's self-esteem.
Absolutely, it's got to.
Yeah.
got to.
Yeah. And that happens all the time. And ADHD is one of those things where like it's, you know, I forget the statistic. If I knew we were going to talk about this, I probably would have checked up on this. But I think you're like 10 times more likely to be incarcerated if you have ADHD. There's like 1 million kind of life comorbidities that you have when you have ADHD compared to someone who's like more neurotypical.
Interesting.
Yeah. So my whole life, it's been like, you know, just kind of like trying to figure out ways to cope with it. And I think now kind of like as a business owner, I've realized that it can really be used to my strength, because there's like so many things that have to be done all at the same time. And I'm so good at like switching between those tasks.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And I think like when your business kind of gets big enough, then you can like hire people to do like administrative things that are kind of naturally really difficult for you, or at least for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's interesting to see people now, you know, who are diagnosed with that, and then like see how like there's so many different routes that you can take.
Yeah.
Especially if, you know, your identity is kind of like, or, you know, the anxiety from having it and being in school like that has kind of like negatively affected you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Were you a good student?
I was all right.
Mm-hmm.
I made A's and B's in high school, you know?
Yeah.
But I think the majority of it was because of how important it was for wrestling.
Right.
Because when I stopped wrestling, I stopped in college and then transferred. Actually, I took a year off and then I went back.
Yeah.
But that whole year I was off, I was like, I'm never taking another test in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Then I go back.
Yeah.
And I have to cram for finals week. And I'm like, I forgot how to study.
Right.
It was almost like I had shrugged off this, like, you know, this pressure that I put on myself for so long when I was wrestling.
Yeah.
And I didn't have it this time when I was studying. I was like, oh man, this discipline thing's gotta kick in at some point.
Yeah.
So I tried to figure it out, but it was way more difficult without wrestling.
Right.
So
yeah. If you don't have like that like extrinsic reward that's motivating you,
right.
that's like releasing all that dopamine, then like it's not gonna, like I can only, like if there's a task that I'm avoiding, I can only get it done at the last possible moment. If I try to do it in advance, it literally will not happen.
Yeah.
But if I have like an hour to get this thing done that I've been avoiding, I'll just like hammer it out.
Yeah. I hate the fact that I share that with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough, man. But when it comes to it's interesting, man, because I met some, you know, because a lot of trainers, right? Mm-hmm. They're people. Some of them were good in school. Some of them liked that structure, that education process.
Yeah.
And then some of them were horrible in school, but understand the body, understand their own body. Right. And so they love training their body. So then they somehow get into training other people.
Right.
And one of my buddies was kind of like that. He was all right in school, but he kind of didn't focus through high school. Mm-hmm. He just focused enough to get into college.
Yeah.
But he said I never smoked cannabis until I was in my late 20s, almost 30.
Yeah.
He started in maybe middle school.
Right.
Dude, there's no way I would have sat in class and done my work if I started smoking in middle school or high school. Yeah. You know what I mean? I've been like thinking about all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah.
There's no way I would have focused.
Yeah.
So now looking back on buddies of mine who started smoking in high school or something like that, and they just kind of went off the rails. You don't communicate with them as much. They're not coming to school as much.
Right.
I was always like, man, come on, dude. But like now I'm like, I totally get it, dude. How could you? How could you focus, at that age when your brain's not really developed and you're kind of figuring shit out?
Yeah.
There's so much stress in your family life. And then this girl doesn't like you. And then,
Yeah. And you're high in class.
And you're high as fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're talking about like, math.
Yeah, what is math?
What is math, dude?
Like, are we ever going to use trigonometry? No.
Dude, I got a funny story. I was a substitute teacher for a little bit when I was coaching wrestling. Mm-hmm. And
what class?
Well, I did high school, and then I did 8th, 7th, 6th.
Wait, but is there like
middle school?
Is there like a topic specifically?
Oh, so what? Yeah, so
just, like,
one
just
was
dive into wherever.
One was
because that's crazy if that's the case.
So I used to sub for my buddy's philosophy class.
Yeah,
and then I subbed for my other buddy's history class, and then I subbed for a 7th grade class. I forgot what that was, but the 6th grade class was a math class. Okay, and this girl was obviously the smartest girl in the class.
Yeah.
And she came to me. It was almost like she knew I wouldn't know the answer.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like she was like one of those kids that was like, oh, she's getting too smart.
Right.
You got to kill her. You got to get rid of her because she's going to expose how dumb I am.
Yeah.
So she comes up to my desk and she's like, Mr. Coach Lowe, can you help me with this problem? I can't remember how the teacher told us to do this. I'm like, okay, yeah, for sure. I'm like, 6th grade math.
Yeah.
This is going to be easy.
Yeah.
I looked at it and I'm like, I forgot how to divide.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, this is like a 3-digit number, and I'm dividing it.
Oh, we're talking long division here.
Yeah, very very long for me, and it's been a long time.
Yeah.
So I start doing the math in front of her, and I come up with an answer, and I'm like, she's like, that's not the answer in the book.
Yeah.
And I'm like, huh. And I'm like, all right, how do I spin this shit? And I'm like, well, do you remember how your teacher solved the problem? And she was like, no, I don't. But she came up with a different answer. And I was like, well, people have different ways of going about solving problems. And I went down this road
just totally
of like just bullshitting.
Turned it into a philosophy
and
class.
I saw her just go, kind of like, you're one of those. You're one of those adults.
Yeah.
And I was like, I couldn't even look her in the eye.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, well, just ask her when she comes back tomorrow, But you're probably right. You're onto something, so just finish your work.
Why didn't you just say, I don't know?
I don't know, man. I just thought I knew.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh no, like how do I? But that gave me so much more empathy for adults, when I was that age, and they would like just answer a random question I'd ask, and I'm just like, that's not the truth. But like they're so stressed out at work, and they're getting a divorce, and they're the kids in the hospital,
and they got their coffee tumbler.
Oh yeah, and their beer gut. I mean, it's just a
all
huge beer gut.
Looking.
So yeah, great nutrition.
They slept in their car last night.
Yeah. And now I'm mad at them for lying to me about this math problem.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Honestly, if someone put a gun to my head and told me that I had to do long division or they were going to kill me, I would pull the trigger myself.
I'm with you.
But I do think, I've always wanted to start a school one day.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the way education
it's horrible.
is in this country, why is math so abstract? Why don't we flip the script and just make math like all applied until the really high level stuff, and then it can be abstract.
Well, dude, it's funny that you mentioned that because there's a guy, Lex Friedman. You heard about this guy? He's like an engineer.
Superman?
No, that's Lex Luthor.
Okay.
Yeah. So he had a woman on his podcast recently who was she's big into math.
Oh yeah.
Jo Boaler, J-O, last name Boaler, and her whole thing is making math visual.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to take your course.
Right.
She got like an online course for students and then also for teachers, teaching them how to explain math visually.
Right.
And she's like, it's insane how many teachers are like, wow, I wish I had this when I was in elementary school.
Yeah.
And this is going to make me, so much better at explaining math to
That's
kids.
awesome.
And I'm like, yeah, that makes so much sense. Like visual instead of like numbers. Like I just remember as a kid, like numbers were intimidating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something about numbers is really intimidating.
Yeah.
Maybe it just shows you how
are they letters?
They just didn't pass the test to be a letter. And then you see Russian, you're like, they're putting letters or they're putting numbers in their alphabet. Like, what's going on here?
What's happening there? Yeah.
Okay. Well, dude, I guess we can talk about what you got going on.
Sure.
So you own a ketamine clinic.
Yes.
Right? In LA. You own 2 or 3 here?
So we have...
I thought you were about to say 6.
We have 2 in LA.
Yeah.
And we're just now opening up another in Las Vegas.
Okay.
As well as another one in Sedona, Arizona.
Okay. And nothing in Tennessee, Florida yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. I'm working on those.
That might be next year or what, 2 years?
Hopefully next year.
Okay. That's cool. And that'll be what, 3 more maybe? 4 more?
So there's
73 more.
There are some
We're going
other
worldwide.
we're in talks with some other places like Kansas City, Austin, Texas, DC area, but those are kind of early stages. Things can fall through all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. I mean, we've talked about this before, and I went down by the office and checked it out. I mean, it's awesome to see this stuff in action.
Yeah.
Because I'm new to the whole psychedelic therapy world. Mm-hmm. And it fascinates me so much because as a personal trainer, I've used my body my whole life. Mm-hmm. In athletics, and now I use it as a trainer. I still train myself, right? Stay healthy, have activities I love, but my body's deteriorating. Like I'm 33, the age of Christ, so it's downhill from here, bro.
Yeah,
I might be up on a cross in a year or 2, but like your body's decaying, and you've got so much more time in your life.
Right.
What can you improve? Mm-hmm. And the mental game, is so important.
Yeah.
And like in my business, people focus on the physical so much, And then after training with me for a few months, they're like, "Oh, this is way more mental than what I thought it was."
Right.
And I feel like that's how hopefully we all get the older we get in life. We're like, "Oh, this is way more mental than any of this physical stuff."
Yeah.
But healing the mind seems to be one of the hardest things to do.
Right.
You have people that become monks, Buddhist monks, Christian monks, and they're trying to escape themselves,
right?
Escape their mind in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So like all these practices have been created to like soothe the mind and the anxiety, the ADHD and stuff.
Yeah.
And now we can kind of like get into it with a chemical, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's just fascinating to me, especially with people with the PTSD that seek this stuff out. That's just like debilitating stuff.
Right. It's a really interesting time right now. When I started these clinics, everyone thought I was a fucking lunatic.
Really?
For having a ketamine clinic.
You mean everybody, meaning those teachers from school?
Definitely those teachers, because they were wrong about everything pretty much.
No potential.
Looking back.
I was wrong. Yeah.
But like, a lot of the people I spoke with, a lot of the doctors who I spoke with, they thought that was too risky. Professionals, psychologists, there's like this, association with ketamine and a horse tranquilizer. So everyone will always say, isn't that a horse tranquilizer?
Right.
Or they'll say like, isn't that like that rave drug that people use? Which, I think when people say like the horse tranquilizer stuff, I think it actually speaks to the safety of ketamine. And
that's true.
And that
we use on animals.
Yeah, we can use it on animals. We use it on kids all the time. It's the most common pediatric anesthetic.
Right. There's something else you use on horses too that
Oh yeah, there's that COVID drug, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we can learn a lot from horses, I guess.
Yeah.
So, but it's a really interesting time and to be in the mental health space, period.
Yeah.
And it's really just the beginning of it, right? Because basically, in the last 2 years is when people are starting to, basically right before COVID is when the script flipped a little bit, and all of a sudden people started to be mindful of mental health in general. Companies like Headspace came out, and they're more of like the border of like mental health and healthcare, and really they're like a wellness brand, I think, at the end of the day. But also companies like BetterHelp are coming out, and they're getting endorsements from 1 million celebrities on social media and things like that. But also like celebrities are now talking about mental health a little bit more. There was that gymnast earlier this year.
Yeah, Bliss.
That doesn't sound right.
No, wasn't it?
But
I know who you're talking about. Of
yeah,
course. Yeah. She couldn't compete because she was just kind of mentally zoned out.
Right. And so it's kind of becoming more of a prominent topic in pop culture, which is great because basically for the last like 2,000 years, if you talk about mental health, people just think you're an idiot or you're weak or you're a pussy. Or like you can't get it together.
It's the only word that popped into my head.
Yeah. And it's insane that we have this association because like when people look at a broken arm, no one questions that your arm is broken. It's very clear. But for some reason, the idea that you can't see depression or you can't see PTSD makes it so that people just cannot comprehend that other people can be suffering from other mental health diagnoses. And so I think now that there's some awareness coming out about that, plus the fact that all of a sudden we are repurposing a really old and safe drug to be used for mental health. And also there are like newer emerging procedures that are coming out for depression specifically, but also anxiety and PTSD and things like that.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to me, man. I was just watching, just to re-up on ketamine and stuff, I was watching a couple videos, and the fascinating thing about ketamine, correct me if I'm wrong, but like compared to maybe like an MDMA version of therapy, is that the ketamine apparently is allowing you or helping you grow new synapses in the brain.
Yeah, synaptogenesis is what it's called, yeah.
Could you kind of explain that?
Yeah, so basically when, we've kind of been traditionally told that depression and anxiety and PTSD to a lesser extent, but mostly depression, are associated with a serotonin deficiency or some sort of neurotransmitter imbalance. But it's not really the case most of the time. If that were the case, SSRIs, which are the most common antidepressants, would just work pretty much for
all
everyone.
The time. Yeah.
And they don't at all. They have like a 40% success rate, and every single trial of SSRIs that one fails means the probability for the next trial is about 50% less. So by the time someone has tried 4 medications,
right,
the success rate, the probability that they'll get better from a 5th medication is less than 5%. I don't like those odds.
No, it's not good at all.
And so these other things like TMS and ketamine, the success rate is so much higher, and it's because they work on different parts of the brain. So we're not really looking at the neurotransmitter level of analysis, but we're looking at kind of larger brain structures, right? With TMS, we look at a part of the brain called the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which kind of connects to, there are some deeper pathways in the brain but you're really increasing neuroplasticity. And then with ketamine...
And neuroplasticity is just growth?
Neuroplasticity is the reorganization. So it can be growth, but it can also be movement. It can also be kind of
reconnectivity, I guess?
Reconnectivity, yeah. So it could be strengthening pathways too.
Right.
And then ketamine, what it does, it basically... It's a drug that, unlike every other antidepressant, it works on a neurotransmitter called glutamate, which is the most common excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain, and it works really fast. So what's cool about ketamine is that it works quickly, and you can literally, if you were to cut someone's brain open or take a brain cell and look at it through a microscope before and like 24 hours after ketamine, you'll see new synapses in that kind of slice that you end up taking.
Yeah, I feel for the guy who they did that on first.
Yeah. They were rats first. But, yeah.
We want to check. You'll be fine. Anybody else done this? No, it's always got to be a first, and you'll go down the history books.
Yeah.
Dang, so that's what they found in rats when they cut their brains open.
Yeah, they were like, wow, there's literally new synapses growing immediately. And it's over part of the brain. It's also part of the prefrontal cortex, but it's a little more medial. So it's a little bit of a different mechanism of action than TMS specifically, because they kind of work on different pathways.
TMS is more
Yeah, so
frontal.
TMS is the magnetic stimulation, which basically directly increases activity and blood flow and cellular metabolism in the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex.
Okay.
Whereas ketamine, via modulating glutamate, it increases synaptogenesis in the medial prefrontal cortex.
Got it. And they just work together.
Yeah, so some people, the way we do it is, some people will come in for TMS only, some people will come in for ketamine only. We pretty much always see higher success rates when people do both together.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I think, again, it's just like that, when you have a multimodal approach to treating depression.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And with the TMS, how long is that? Because I know the ketamine's an hour. Right. So
ketamine session, we book like 2-hour sessions.
Yeah.
Just because it's not just about, some people do okay just kind of like taking ketamine and leaving, but we try to focus a lot on the actual experience of ketamine and kind of creating the right setting and intentionality behind each infusion, right? So it could be, so it's usually 2 hours. There's usually some talking beforehand, getting people comfortable, and then the actual administration. And then when we stop the infusion after about 40 to 60 minutes usually, then people tend to stay there kind of in the same room for like another 30 to 45 minutes or so, just to kind of reorient into reality again, because it can be a pretty powerful experience.
I've seen some people on YouTube kind of like, it's not like they don't show themselves during it, but they show themselves post, and they're just like, wow, that was something.
It's so
you know what I mean?
It's so interesting the way people respond to it, because there's there's a staggering amount of individual differences in how people respond to ketamine. So like what's always kind of funny in a way is the person who comes in who has that very typical melancholic depression where kind of like you can tell that they're in a very internalized state. They're not reacting much to the external environment. And, you know, you can kind of like see the sadness and despair on their face. They're talking slow. They're moving slow. You know, no energy at all. But then like sometimes during the ketamine infusion, those people will not shut the fuck up. I mean, they'll just talk for like a mile a minute during the whole time.
And you've got a sitter there?
Yeah. There's always someone in the room the entire time, which nice. I feel is important.
Yeah,
I know
huge. Yeah.
I know some other clinics, they're kind of more of the mindset that you can just give them the drug and the drug will do its thing, you know, and then kind of leave them alone. I think I like having someone there. I think it's a more kind of personalized experience. Even things like changing the music for them, you know, changing the ambient lighting in the room can be a valuable part of the experience.
Yeah, and I think people downplay the fact that when you're depressed, you feel alone.
Yeah.
Like, don't you think that, you know, adding someone to this experience would help, you know, in the process of overcoming this type of depression? That makes all the sense in the world to me to have somebody in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you said that they can't shut the fuck up. The people who are
sometimes.
But what is the common? Not by outing any patients, but like what is the common kind of verbiage that a person like that would say or like kind of like realize or feel in the moment?
I can't tell you how many times people have come out of the experience and just started crying because they forgot what happiness felt like.
Yeah.
They forgot that they had the capability to be happy themselves, just because they've been so stuck in their depression or in their trauma, because it works great for PTSD as well, just for so long stuck in this state. And just to have a respite, to be able to feel happy for even a fleeting, 30 minutes, that is such a powerful experience.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Yeah. I love hearing that.
It's cool. It's even like just kind of being in the reception area when people come in and then seeing them come out with a smile on their face. It's like, it's crazy, especially because a lot of times these are people who have tried like medication after medication after medication and therapy, and they've tried eating healthy, they've tried working out, they've tried all the shit that everyone's telling them to do all the time, and none of it works, right? And so this is and none of it works because nothing's really working on the physiology, which is really what is causing the depression or the mood disorder in the first place.
Yeah. Dude, I get it. And that's like in the fitness industry, right? Yeah. I've got to tell you that I'm what you need. Because without me...
What do you mean?
You know what I mean? But like when people come in to see me, they don't, they are bad. A lot of them are battling depression.
Yeah.
Which has created weight gain. Right. Unhealthy
sometimes
habits.
From the medication itself, right?
True.
Yeah.
But number one, I mean, they haven't been working out.
Yeah.
Right? So in the process of training somebody, it always you become closer to your clients.
Yeah.
And you realize the mental issues that they're dealing with.
Right.
And you're like, yeah, another set of push-ups isn't going to help you today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's other things. I need a multi-prong approach, right?
Right.
To my clients.
Right.
And this seems like one of the things that you can add to it.
Yeah.
Because you can't get this benefit that ketamine or any psychedelic therapy can give you from really anything else.
Right.
Yeah. So like adding all that together, you have a physical, habit of training. You have nutritional habits of eating well.
Right.
And then you have habits, or therapy for your mind.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of people will train for a little bit and then you'll lose them for months.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then they'll come back 6 months later, 15, 20 pounds heavier. And they're like, I gotta start training with you again. And I'm like, yeah, I want you to. But also, what about all these other things?
Right.
And all those other things being like 2 things.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, what about ketamine therapy? Like,
Yeah.
you've been depressed since you were how old?
Right.
You know, I know you feel good after these workouts, but like, there's more to it. What were you gonna say?
How do people start revealing like their underlying mood disorders to you?
So sometimes it's within an activity, it's within a movement, and you can tell that because when you push people cardiovascularly, they break.
Oh, really?
Mentally, they break.
Interesting.
Right. So that's usually where, if the heart rate's up at a certain level for a certain amount of time that they're not used to,
Yeah.
and I'm pushing them, giving them. I love to throw variables at my clients.
Yeah.
Because that's what my coaches used to do is for wrestling and football, because nothing's ever the way, the strict, all right, we're going to run this play, we're going to go around the side, and we're going to score a touchdown. All right, let's do that 10 times, and we'll be ready for the game.
Right, but that's not reality.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So I do that with my clients. I'll throw variables in there. Like last set, instead of doing 10, we've got as many as we can.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But that's when they break. And I saw it when I was a wrestling coach too, and I saw it as a wrestler. Those hard practices where you're pushing so hard that it's just mental now.
Right.
It's just mental. You tell yourself one thing, go.
Yeah.
Go. It gets real, real condensed of your thoughts, and that's where it usually comes out. And they'll start, huffing and puffing or something like that, and you bond over those moments because you push them through those hard times. And then they start to, I've just been so stressed with this, and this. And you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Right. So a lot of it comes down to trust, but then you'll have moments where like just come out of the blue.
Really?
Yeah. I had a guy, I was training, I think it was the first session we did together. I got his heart rate up there, and he was young, so I knew he'd be fine. We did his blood pressure, and we got him on a roller. I got him on a roller at the very end. He's soaking wet.
An ab roller?
Yeah. No, like a T-spine roller.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like a foam roller.
Foam roller. There we go.
Okay.
And I got him on his T-spine.
Yeah.
And he was real locked up here. And you can tell it's just from years of tension, anxiety, and depression. I mean, I can see this stuff when people come in their body language.
Right.
Because you hold that shit.
For sure.
In certain places.
Absolutely.
Men hold it different in different areas than women, but sometimes they share those, that trap tension.
Right.
And he had a lot of it. And we jumped on that foam roller, dude, and he was shaking like that, dude.
No way.
He just laid on and started crying.
Really?
Kid you not, dude. Started crying. He's like, I can't do this. And just the tears started coming. I'm like, all right, man, just relax. Just breathe. We don't have to do it. Let's just stretch. Just lay down.
Yeah.
And he had to like cover his eyes, but like that, it was that when you put your body in something where you feel vulnerable, right? You've been holding it tight for so long. Yeah, get that turtle shell.
Yeah,
you're just protecting yourself from something that happened to you younger when you were younger.
Right,
that kind of position pulls that shit out.
That's so interesting.
It's interesting, man.
So did he later reveal to you like, hey, I've been struggling with? Oh, really?
Yeah. I had some family members going through some stuff, and then my dad passed. And then we started talking about mental health because that was something that my dad had dealt with.
Oh, really?
Depression.
Oh, man.
And suicidal thoughts for years. And then when I brought it up, he was like, yep, me too. Boom, boom, boom.
Really?
Yeah. So I think a lot of it comes down to trust. And so like, have you ever done one of those analysis or assessments with a trainer?
Yeah.
So I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate it. I want to build a relationship, and the only way that we can do that with this power dynamic here, where I'm telling you what to do, is we see where your limits are, and we agree at what limits you're okay at, right? And then we try to push a little bit more, and I'm proving to you that I can get you to push yourself more, in a healthy way, in a safe way, and then you're proving to yourself that this is worth it by trusting me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that relationship has to be built before, real stuff can even be talked about.
Yeah.
So
do you do the assessments?
I do my own.
You do your own?
I do my own.
Okay.
Yeah, at this point, like, I know how to train anybody.
Yeah.
And I mean, once your heart rate gets up, we'll see what you can handle.
Right.
Right. I've seen people's faces for so many years, like when they're about to, fall over, or, something's about to happen, and I'm like, all right, rest.
Right.
And they're like, oh God. Usually when I'm doing this on my own, I just keep going. And I'm like, yeah, that's why you don't ever continue.
Yeah.
You'll do it for a week. You'll get on the treadmill for a week and you'll push yourself.
Right.
You'll take 3, 4, maybe you'll take a week off. You'll come back, try to do the same thing, the same speed for the same amount of time for 45 minutes, and you can't do it. And you're like, well, then I'm not going to do this anymore. And you just fall off the wagon.
Yeah.
Right. So I see that, and a lot of it comes down to like how you've not been taught how to train your body.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like most people have never been taught how to run properly.
Yeah, bro. In PE, we had those like little like
cones.
They're like the little skateboards that we'd sit on. You know what I'm talking about? Like the little they're like the square like colored boards or like plastic things that have wheels.
Okay. Yeah.
And we just like sit on and we just slide around on those.
Right.
What was that?
I don't know.
That was not helpful for anyone.
No. And we had the mile run. You had a mile run, right?
Yeah, I got out of it a lot.
Okay.
I would just hang out with the girls who said they're on their periods.
There you go.
And I'd be like, yeah, I'm on my period. Sorry.
Yeah, me too. This was LA.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That would not have flown. Dude, I had the toughest PE teacher, Miss Fox.
Yeah.
She was a hard ass. One of those closet lesbians from the 90s,
Yeah.
I mean, just a kind of a mullet.
Yeah.
She had a mullet.
Yeah.
Tucked her shirt in. She was like a softball player.
I saw a meme about this recently. It was like PE teachers back then, and it was like...
It's so true. It was the ultimate warrior.
Yeah.
Like the ultimate warrior. Kid you not. But yeah, so you would never really even train for the mile. Like you never went over running technique.
Yeah, no, they would just start running.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, I don't get it. I'm all sweaty and I have to go back to class.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was I supposed to bring extra clothes? I don't know. I have ADHD and no one told me anything. Or I wasn't listening.
Listening. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man. So like I've got older clients that I'm teaching how to run for the first time. Like technically how to run in their 40s.
Yeah.
And they enjoy it. They're like, wow, I wish I would have been taught this in PE.
Right.
It's like, well, yeah. Don't we all?
Yeah, I actually paid someone a few years ago to like teach me how to run.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because I was like, I want to run, but like I feel like I'm not doing it right at all.
What did you learn? What was like the big thing that you were doing wrong?
I think the biggest thing, and I feel like this is common with a lot of trainers in general, is they wanted me to like breathe with my running. Like
they want me to breathe. I don't know what their problem is.
But every time I've like ever talked to a personal trainer, they're like, okay, like the focus is always on the breathing.
Yeah.
But yeah, with this guy,
Did you realize that that's a you problem? It's not the trainers. It's like all these trainers keep saying the same thing within the first 5 minutes.
I'm pretty sure it's just this weird trainer thing. Like they say it to everyone
it's just the
all
trainers.
The time. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I never thought about it that way. Maybe it is a me problem.
Yeah. I've got a client that still won't breathe.
Yeah.
Been training her for like 4 years.
Yeah.
Still won't breathe. She'll hold her breath as long as she can.
Yeah.
And then just, we'll be boxing and she's like 1, 2, 3, and she's and just doing like 10 combos in a row, and then one big breath. And by the time she's taking that one big breath, she can't keep going. Yeah, because she held her breath for too long. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, you got to breathe. She's, oh yeah.
It's a good reminder.
Yeah. I mean, and when you're not taught how to run right, you're not taught how to breathe properly. Because in order to run for a longer distance, you do need to sync up your breath with your movement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or dance will do that. Some type of like movement where you're going for a long period of time. You have to sync your breath up.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe you just don't like breathing, man.
I guess I don't.
But as far as like form and technique, what was one of the things that they brought out?
I think that I was the breathing is what I remember the most, and it was like breathing like every 3 steps or something like that.
Okay,
like
that was a good rhythm
1,
for you.
2, 1, and then like take a breath on that. Like the second time I'm on that foot, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think they just wanted me to like lean forward a little more. I think I was like leaning backwards a little bit. Yeah. Do a lot of people do that?
No, it's just a funny way of saying it. They wanted me to lean forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to fall.
Right.
Yeah.
So those were the two big things.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That changes a lot.
Yeah.
Just leaning forward.
It was helpful, but then I got bored like a week later of running.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, I never really wanted to run.
Yeah, this is stupid.
And then they send you a video of you running and you're like, yep, never doing that again.
I've never seen a video of me running. I think I could probably never run again if I saw a video of me running.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But no, it's interesting. But like, as far as my clients, like I've told my clients about psychedelic therapy and some of them have done it, and have benefited greatly. Yeah.
What do they say?
Well, one of my clients, two of my clients did MDMA therapy.
Okay.
And it was, they had, their own little journey, when one was way more visual.
Yeah.
She like had a conversation with the 5-year-old self, her middle school self, her high school self. She was seeing all these different versions of herself.
Yeah.
And kind of apologizing to them for not remembering them.
Right.
Kind of forgetting who she was.
Yeah.
So, just life-changing experience. Right. Then another one kind of was what you were talking about, couldn't shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Because he was like, I just feel like I'm a talker. He was just like realizing these things. I'm a talker. Why am I not expressing myself?
Yeah.
Like right when it kicked in, he was like that. And he's like, I have to express myself.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Was he a guy who didn't express himself very much before that?
Yeah. And knowing him, I kind of felt negligent as a friend, for like not realizing that he wasn't expressing himself as much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think we get, at least for me, and I'm probably speaking for everybody, you think like you hear, like when we're young, right? You hear somebody describe a kid who doesn't talk a lot and doesn't act like the class clown, doesn't act like a buffoon, as he's quiet.
Right.
And it's like, I would never call someone quiet again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's so much going on in that kid's mind that's not allowing him to be a kid.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, none of what we're doing is natural by any means, right? Like the idea of school in general, of being a child and like having to sit down for 8 hours straight every day is just, it's completely absurd and like human evolution perspective, right? I mean, humans have been evolving for 40,000 years, and only in the last 100 have kids even been in school,
right? Yeah. And I guess what I'm saying is like with kids, you never know what a personality. We develop our personalities. It's like, oh, he's a introvert. He's a quiet person. It's just like, he's probably battling depression since he was in middle school. You know what I mean? Like, or she has been. It's like, very rarely do you just like. Are you just super chill and you don't say nothing? You're all put together. Like, I'm good, man.
It's interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I remember, so when I was in middle school, like, Columbine was still like fresh.
Yeah, 97, right? 99. It's probably 99.
I don't
right?
remember.
Yeah,
but it was still like a topic of conversation.
Yeah,
right. And like I remember, like if you were a kid having mental health issues, people would think Columbine.
Right.
They wouldn't think like depression, anxiety. No,
that's
like,
it, dude.
It's ridiculous, but that's
really
and these
kids struggle
thought.
with mental health, and you're like, oh God,
yeah,
this is what mental health is. You shoot up schools.
Yeah, exactly. So like the conversation has really shifted.
Yeah, it really has. Good point.
Yeah.
Dang, man, that is crazy though.
Yeah.
Like that was like the first time I heard about it.
Yeah, like people were like scared of like the quiet kids, right?
Right.
Or if they were like a little socially awkward and quiet, they'd be like the Columbine kid. It's like it was completely absurd.
They didn't realize that it's a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously those kids had a lot of stuff that they were dealing with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember that there was a kid in our school right when that shit happened. When I was in middle school, and he was like, "Oh yeah, well I'll just shoot the school up too." Just made a side comment to some idiot that he was talking shit to at lunch.
Right.
They took it so seriously, and he was like a rough kid.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh man, he's gonna shoot the school up. So it was like overreaction.
Yeah.
To that when it should have been more of a conversation.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, hey, let's start with a conversation.
Yeah.
They expelled him.
No way.
Yeah, they expelled him for like a week or something like that for that type of a threat.
Right.
It's like, oh man, like I look back at some of the kids I went to school with back in Stanley, North Carolina, small town, like 2,500 people.
Right.
And I'm like, man, they just didn't get a fair shake at life at all.
Yeah.
You know, not at all.
Not one bit.
Because you're, you know, people just didn't know. Like, can you believe that YouTube came out in 2006?
Yeah.
Before that, you had to get a book.
I know.
Only books, dude.
Yeah. Can you imagine reading in this day and age?
But it's crazy, man.
It is crazy.
Now you can just like, oh, what is that? Oh yeah, got it.
Yeah.
It's that's just crazy.
Yeah. No, I remember like when
Changes everything.
I was like a musician when I was younger, and I like learned how to play guitar mostly through like reading books. And now like sometimes, you know, like there's like a million videos of like people like showing you like how to play. Like it's a totally different world.
Absolutely. Back to TikTok.
Yeah.
You kind of get hooked. I mean, you can pretty much learn anything on YouTube or TikTok. It's almost like people will chop up their YouTube clips into small bite-sized clips for TikTok, and you're like, oh man, this guy knows everything.
Yeah.
Because he's just throwing facts out in like 30-second videos.
Right.
And you're like, he's a wealth of knowledge.
He's
and then
a genius, but that's like his only thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the only thing he knows.
But then you go to his YouTube channel and he's got like long form stuff, and it's just
Right.
like, it's not as enticing as those 30-second clips.
I know. But the problem with YouTube, in my opinion...
But then again, if you love it, you'll stick around.
Yeah.
You'll learn.
Yeah.
You know?
I got like weirdly into YouTube. I'm not going to say weirdly. I got like into YouTube. Like,
Okay. All right.
just bear with me
Naked
here. During the pandemic, just because like there was like no TV being produced, you know?
Right.
And I needed I needed to consume something.
Right.
So I started like following like random people on YouTube and stuff. But what gets me annoyed now is like there's so much monetization going on with YouTube where it's like a video is 30 minutes long. I know it's a longer video because I know they're gonna get paid for, which is fine. But like the actual content, there's just so much fluff, right? Like it's such a small amount of content that's diluted with fluff in that entire video.
Yeah. That's why I don't even upload these podcasts as the complete podcast on YouTube. I just do the clips.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I'm like, nobody wants to really listen to this all the way through. Maybe once I build the following, more than like 2 subscribers.
Oh, you only have 2 subscribers? Oh.
He's out. But once I grow it to more, I'll put the long form out there. But like, I go to people's YouTube channels all the time of podcasts I listen to all the time, and I'm like, I don't want the long form. Give me the clips.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even want to watch the long form.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'd rather just listen to the long form and watch like specific clips to see if I even want to listen to the long form. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just want to like get to the good stuff and move on,
Right.
basically.
I had a question for you though.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about all these different, well, you know, got MDMA therapy, psilocybin therapy.
Yeah.
Apparently they use those together.
Do they?
I've heard of it.
Okay.
I was talking to a therapist back in February about it, and she said that's something that they have done.
Okay.
With patients.
Okay.
But that was the first time I've ever heard of that.
Yeah.
It makes sense though, because the MDMA kind of like calms you down, right? Because the amygdala is, you know, kind of shut off, the fear center, right?
Yeah.
So like,
for the most part,
right?
Yeah.
I can understand that how that might benefit you if you have like a anxious reaction to the psilocybin.
Yeah.
But that's kind of part of it, right?
So psilocybin and MDMA, to my knowledge, have not been used together in a scientific or clinical study type of setting, right? So right now, MDMA and psilocybin are not FDA approved, so they can only be administered legally in a clinical trial setting.
Right.
So all of the the research I know is really only from those clinical trials or from studies done internationally. But there are starting to be like really good quality studies now from the US from these clinical trials that are coming out. So I don't know if people are using them together. I think what's happening for the most part is pharmaceutical companies are coming in and they're seeing that this is kind of a new paradigm of antidepressant medication, and they're trying to basically patent these chemicals in various ways. So making like basically a mirror image of the molecule, patenting that, and then kind of using that in a clinical study, for instance. Got it. So there's a lot of that going on, or making like very small tweaks to the molecule. But currently there are companies researching variations of MDMA, of psilocybin, of LSD, of DMT, of basically everything that's been known to have hallucinogenic properties now.
Yeah. That's fascinating to me, man. I'm really interested. I've not done much of it. I've only done MDMA therapy.
Yeah.
I've never done a psilocybin session. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I'm not like jonesing to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not one of those risk takers.
Yeah.
Relax.
So MDMA therapy, I think that's probably the thing I'm most excited for in general to be FDA approved, because I think that the way it's currently being structured in these trial settings is so fascinating, because kind of the background knowledge that is helpful to know is that basically every time you recall a memory, that memory is changed somewhat. Right. So that every time you recall a memory, like the memory you're actually recalling isn't quite the same memory as it was before you recalled it, which is kind of a mind fuck in and of itself.
Right.
Basically with MDMA therapy, when it's used for something like PTSD, you use it with a guide and you basically talk about this traumatic experience. And as you're recalling the traumatic experience on the MDMA, you're changing the memory, and you're changing the memory while you're in this state of, heightened euphoria. And that's really changing the association that you have with the memory.
And also objectivity.
What do you mean?
Right? Like kind of stepping away from it.
Right.
The personal experience, and then kind of looking at it from the outside a little bit.
I think MDMA has that. I think other similar drugs have more of that kind of removal of yourself and kind of ability to look at yourself from a different space. Like ketamine is a dissociative by nature, so ketamine really has that quality where it's almost like you're looking at yourself from above sometimes, and you're kind of dissociated from what you're feeling, and you're able to reflect on kind of the person you've been for the last X amount of time. I think MDMA is more about kind of being present in the moment, but when you recall these traumatic experiences, you're really reconfiguring how these memories are stored and all of these associations that you have with them.
So that's the question I want to ask. And we've talked about this before, but a lot of people struggling with depression and anxiety are on some type of SSRI.
Yeah.
Right. So they could obviously benefit from an MDMA therapy session, but because you're already taking something that is interacting with your serotonin transmitters now? Receptors.
Yeah.
You're not going to get the full effect of the MDMA.
Right.
Right. So then you have the alternative of ketamine therapy, right? Which you can take even though you're on an SSRI, correct?
You can take ketamine while you're on an SSRI, yeah. And ketamine is the only thing that's legal now to do in a clinical setting, right? So you can't currently in the United States go to a doctor's office and be like, hey, can you prescribe me MDMA?
Right. But potentially in the future, like a year or two, it seems.
Hopefully,
right?
It's looking like the FDA will grant it breakthrough designation.
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of having one or two good quality trials come in and be published in a good journal.
Right.
And then I think that will probably happen.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, that's very good to hear for people, because I've heard a lot of people like, I want to do MDMA therapy when it's legal.
Yeah.
But I'm on an SSRI and I don't want to come off of it.
Right.
Because they're scared.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they've dealt with some suicidal thoughts, and or you know, they just, once they're off the antidepressant, they just get back into their that dark part of the mind.
Sometimes, yeah. It's also really hard to get off of antidepressants. And unfortunately, I think that these are issues that aren't discussed enough when people are prescribed antidepressants, oftentimes from their primary care provider.
Yeah.
They're not really told that, hey, you're taking this, you might have severe withdrawal effects. This is called discontinuation syndrome when you try to stop taking it. So you could have brain zaps. That's like the most common discontinuation syndrome side effect.
What's that?
It's exactly what it sounds like. It feels like your brain's being zapped for a second or two.
Wow.
You can have, you know, kind of a reversal of all the side effects that you have when you take the SSRIs. So sometimes your mood will stay kind of at wherever it is before you stop taking it. Sometimes you'll relapse into the depression or anxiety, insomnia, headaches, grogginess, you know, all of the whole list of side effects you can have with discontinuation syndrome as well.
A whole list.
So I was on a high dose of Prozac, and I gained 60 pounds. This is when I was an undergrad. And I went to the doctor and I was like, hey, is there any other like non-SSRI you can take? I can take. I've like, you know, I'm like 60 pounds overweight and I'm like 24. You know, it's not a good place to be in. And they were like, no, Prozac doesn't do that to you. And I was like, no, it does. I'm like nothing has changed. And this was told to me by multiple doctors. So then I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to do this myself. And I just kind of created like a small taper schedule of decreasing the amount of Prozac I was taking. Obviously the weight just fell off. And I felt like shit. Like I couldn't sleep and I had the brain zaps. It was a really horrible experience that lasted for a few months.
Jeez.
And you know, I'm glad that when I took the Prozac, it got me out of the depressive episode I was in, but I really wish that someone had versed me in what was going to happen. And the fact that like no one takes you off of these medications.
Yeah.
You know, psychiatrists unfortunately are not trained for the most part on taking you off of medications. They're trained to prescribe medications.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, I've literally never heard someone say that.
Yeah,
but that's true.
And I think the way we have it in our society is a little backwards. So, like Japan, for instance, TMS is considered a first-line treatment for depression, which I think makes sense because if you have depression, why would you go with the chronic lifelong treatment if there's just an acute treatment and you can just deal with this in, you know, 6 to 8 weeks and move on with your life?
Right.
Why are we doing these things that you have to take for the rest of your lives that have zero long-term safety data? You know, like literally there's not a single like 20-year study on what is happening in your brain if you take SSRIs every single day. So for some people, the benefit outweighs the risk, right? Like if you're like severely suicidal, then you know that's great. It's probably the best option for you. I think for other people, it makes more sense to do like an acute course of ketamine, or maybe in the future acute course of psilocybin or TMS, as opposed to, you know, going to this now older class of medications.
Yeah, man, I agree. And I find that, you know, the same people who, you know, back in the 90s, early 2000s, who started as a kid, you know, taking some type of SSRI, has a chance now at not going down that same path. Right. You know?
Yeah.
And you know, you think about, because you think about world problems every once in a while, and you're just like, God, I can't do anything about this.
Yeah.
But it's like there's only so much you can do for people who have already been in the trenches of that situation for like decades. Yeah. But there's a lot that you can do for people about to jump in those. You know what I mean? Like this, for instance, you know, there's a bunch of kids, especially with, you know, social media now, just like destroying kids' brains.
Right.
You know, the suicide rates have gone up in teenagers. Depression's gone up.
Yeah.
Astronomically, you know. I mean, I feel like it's due to, you know, the undeveloped brain of a teenager, you know, on social media all the time.
Yeah.
I think that plays a huge factor. I don't know what you think.
So I disagree. I don't necessarily think it's because of social media. I think it's a combination of things.
Sure.
I think, you know, like I was saying earlier, like the society we live in is not the society that we evolved to be in basically any capacity, right? As animals, we evolved to, you know, swing through vines on forests and run around and forage for food and hunt, right? We're not doing any of that now.
Right.
You know, we're making podcasts,
Yeah.
right? What is that?
Yeah. We should just have a fire. Right? Well, we got a candle.
Yeah.
This is our fire, and we're talking shit by the fire. So I don't know.
I think there's kind of an inherent anxiety where, you know, when you're doing something like sitting at work all day.
Oh, yeah. It just destroys you.
It's kind of a miserable existence for some people.
Yeah.
And I think that I think that back when we were growing up, there were kind of, you know, there was still that old school kind of almost baby boomer sentiment of like, you'll go to college, you'll get a good job, you'll have a good career, you'll contribute to your 401k, whatever the fuck that means.
I don't know. Asking the wrong guy.
Right. And I think now, like, we're kind of seeing through that as a society. And I think kids today are seeing that, like, that sounds horrible. Right. You know, I don't want this weird nuclear family where everyone's super repressed and you can't be yourself and you're worried everything you do, you're worried about what the community will think. And you know, it's not a lifestyle where anyone was really happy.
Yeah.
But there's no kind of alternative.
Yeah.
Unless you're a TikTok millionaire now.
That's the only alternative, dude.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
So it's either you make it in TikTok or you die.
Or you die. You know what? Yeah, I thought you were going to go down this road, but I started thinking of another thing on top of it that's adding to like the rise in depression in teenagers. You are sitting in class at that young of an age, right? Mm-hmm. But you have access to this at all times. Yeah. If we would have had that, we would probably have been different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like on top of the phone and social media, on top of sitting in class.
Right.
And just suffering through, you know, a lecture by a teacher.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what were we thinking about? Like, just get outside.
I was just bored. I had to look at the wall.
I just want to go to my room and play a video game or something like that.
Yeah.
Or work on my Dragon Ball Z website.
Yeah.
You know, you're not thinking about, just all the endless opportunities on your phone.
Yeah, but we had like MySpace, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
We did. Yeah, by gosh.
Yeah, that's top 8, you know.
Top 8.
Who's going to be on it tonight?
Dude, and the song. I felt like the song defined you more.
Oh, really? Than the top 8?
I would change it every week.
I thought the top 8 was everything. And then the song was like an accessory to add.
Wow.
I don't think I had maybe I did a
top
song.
8.
I don't know.
What did someone do to get out of your top 8 one time?
I don't know. I don't know if I had 8 friends, to be honest. I think
so. That's why it was so important.
I think I had like a.
You're just trying to fill out the top 8.
I just tried to complete the top 8.
Yeah, there we go.
You know, I didn't have to kick anyone out.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Dang.
And there was LiveJournal. And
I don't remember LiveJournal.
Oh, really? That was like the emo social media platform. It was like long form, like blogs. It was like a journal entry that you write.
Okay.
And it would be like 12-year-old me, and I'd be like, I'm so sad. Fuck everything. And then there was like Dead Journal, which was the goth version of LiveJournal.
Yeah.
That was
emo to goth.
Yeah.
There's a difference here.
There is. There's an important distinction.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I'm really excited about ketamine because I know so many people who are our age. I'm older than you, right? 33? You're 72?
I'm 31.
And, you know, around our age that were those kids, right? That got on an antidepressant in their teenage years or even in college. And, you know, it's become their identity.
Right.
You know, and it's like masking who they really are. You know what I mean? Because you need
Yeah.
the natural flow of emotion, right, in your life.
Uh,
Don't you think?
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, I don't think medication necessarily dims like everyone's kind of highs and lows, but it definitely does sometimes.
And and an SSRI was probably going to just keep you a little higher, on the upper register.
Generally, yeah. But sometimes it'll normalize, right? But then sometimes it will just like totally block out any emotion,
right? Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine who had been on Adderall since he was like 5, 6, something like that. Like, and he just recently quit. And
How'd
he's
it
in
go?
his 30s. Rough.
Yeah,
Very rough. But I mean, even that, like, I never got on Adderall or never even tried it, but like, I can see how you get on this and you're like, oh yeah, this is me.
Have you never tried any medication for ADHD?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
How come?
Because of the horror stories of Adderall.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one, right?
Yeah.
Ritalin, I think, was big when we were younger.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of kids got on.
Yeah.
And I don't know. As an adult, I started thinking about it, and I was like, I just feel like I was not diagnosed properly, or just didn't show all those signs when I was younger.
Right.
But now, I don't know why.
Have you ever thought about getting tested?
I have. So I tried to, a few years ago, I was trying to get, what's the alternative to Adderall? That's like,
there's a lot. There's Vyvanse, Concerta.
what's the one where it's kind of based on the that movie with Bradley Cooper?
Limitless?
Limitless.
Oh, modafinil.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. All the Silicon Valley CEOs were taking it. Like 2
Right.
years
Yeah.
ago.
So I tried to get some of that, but then I had to go in for a psychological evaluation.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to do it, so I was like, it's not that important.
Okay.
I was like, what was I thinking about?
It's interesting.
I went on to something else.
Classic. Yeah. It's interesting to know because there's like subtypes of ADHD, right? So there's like an inattentive subtype, there's a hyperactive subtype, and then there's a combined subtype. And there's a guy, Russell Barkley, who's like one of the foremost experts in ADHD right now. And he's come up with another subtype called sluggish cognitive tempo, which is related, but kind of almost like a separate branch entirely.
Interesting.
So it's interesting. Yeah, it could be interesting just kind of seeing like where your specific strengths and weaknesses are in terms of like your entire executive function domain.
Now, is that a common test, or is that a specific test that he kind of came up with?
No, it's a common test. It would be called a neuropsychological evaluation. Typically, if you get them done right, they'll typically like take a few days. Like you'll go in for like 2-3 hours a day for like a week. To
neuropsychological evaluation.
Yeah, and you'll see a neuropsychologist. So that's a clinical psychologist who's done an additional fellowship in something called neuropsychology, which is specifically regarding testing. So looking for things like ADHD, but also things like kind of figuring out where deficits may be after a traumatic brain injury or a stroke, and looking at like the progression of Alzheimer's disease and things like that. What
are some other, means of dealing with ADHD other than an Adderall or
medication's one. It's a worthwhile avenue to explore if it has been unexplored. I think the best case for medication is, I can't speak for everyone, but I think kind of on average the best case for medication is really on an as needed basis, and kind of figuring out what days the medication will be used to support you and what days to kind of hone your strengths as someone with ADHD without medication. Like for me, I know like being owning a business, like there's a lot of different things that I have to do all the time, so medication doesn't suit me very well most of the time, because when you're on medication for ADHD, it helps you sustain focus on one thing, and you're not good at switching between different tasks.
Yeah.
But I kind of have to switch tasks all day long. But like, I was fired from my last 3 jobs, and I probably wouldn't have been fired from any of them had I been on medication.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You could just do that one thing all day long.
Because I basically had to do like 1 or 2 things all day long, but I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I got in trouble for talking. I was like a grown man. I was like,
isn't that the best?
yeah. I couldn't do it.
It's a grown man.
Multiple times.
Wow.
Multiple times. But
Love that job. That's a great job.
Yeah, it was the worst job for me. There was a job I had where I was like measuring stents all day in like CT scans for a clinical research organization, and I had to like I just had to sit at my desk all day, and everyone around me was like quiet, and I went crazy.
I bet.
Like I had to keep talking to people. I was like, how are you guys just sitting here and doing your work?
Yeah.
You know? Like,
What'd they say?
They were just like, what are you talking about?
We serve Satan? What is it? Hail Satan?
They're just like normal people. So they're like, this is fine. I'm happy, you know?
And you're just losing it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's why I'm a trainer.
Yeah.
Like I've tried to do that, like sit in an office kind of scenario.
Yeah.
It's just awful.
No. So, to go back to your question and answer about, strategies for ADHD, there's something called neurofeedback, which can be really helpful. It's basically, it involves using electrodes to record your brain activity and feed it into a computer in real time. And then based on what your brain is doing, your computer gives you feedback. So basically, if you are kind of showing basically, if the computer's picking up like a maladaptive brain pattern, whatever you're doing on the screen will change. So like if you're watching a movie, it'll get darker and smaller. And if you're exercising like a good or like a positive brain pattern, then the movie will get brighter and larger on the screen. And over time, you really learn how to make those changes, and it kind of gives you the flexibility to focus when you want to, but also it doesn't kind of take away that hyper focus or like switching focus really quickly away.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah. It's really cool. It's really helpful for a lot of people. And then I think a lot of people would benefit just from kind of figuring out what their coping strategies are for ADHD. Like it took me a really long time, but I eventually figured out a way to succeed in school. I figured out a way to take notes that works for me. I figured out a way to study that finally worked for me. And it took me like until grad school to figure all this out. And just kind of figuring out how to organize your life. Like I have this whole system with like email. Like if I get an email, if it takes like 30 seconds to respond, I'll respond. If it takes like more than 30 seconds of thought, I leave it unread until I like can sit down and have some time to like respond through all my email like that. But that's just like my process.
Yeah. You found out a system.
Yeah. To-do lists. Like I think this is common for people with ADHD. They'll work temporarily, but then eventually you're always going to make another to-do list, and eventually you're going to have like 50 to-do lists. Does that happen to you?
Yeah.
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 So I
have
like 50 to-do lists. They're all half completed.
Yeah.
But eventually like you just have to start a new list because there's so much stuff on the old list.
Yeah.
So you can't focus on what
But you can't delete the old one because you need it for reference.
You still got to do some stuff on the old one. Yeah.
So what do you do with those? How do you deal with multiple to-do lists?
I don't have a strategy.
Yeah, you just hadn't figured that one out.
I have employees now who will just like remind me if I haven't gone back to them on something.
Got it.
Yeah. And I'm
That's
like,
helpful.
please remind me, like always remind me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. And then those things get done
Yeah.
in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my girlfriend's, she can just work and go through a to-do list. Boom, boom, boom.
That's
boom,
crazy
boom.
to me.
And then at the end of the day, she's like, I don't know what happened, but I can't wait to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And no drugs, no Adderall, nothing. Just like that's how she is. She can just go from task to task to task.
Right.
And that's why she's good at her job, managing people.
Right.
But yeah, it's fascinating because like I'm like, well, let's talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't really want to do it.
Yeah.
I feel like if we talked about it a little bit longer, we could find out an easier way to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm intensely lazy.
Oh, yeah?
I'm like a very lazy person, which I think is a good quality
I think so.
at the end of the day, because
If you make it work for you, yeah.
a lazy person is always going to find the most efficient way to do something.
You're right.
Right?
You're right, man. So Conor McGregor's jiu-jitsu coach, jiu-jitsu MMA coach, I met him a couple months ago, John Kavanagh. He got his black belt in jiu-jitsu from a guy who was older and was lazy. And he was like, that is the best person to learn jiu-jitsu from, because they're shortcutting everything.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they're not making it an athletic event.
Right.
You know, they're like, I'm going to make this so easy for me to where I don't have to move much, and I make him move into everything I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And that's the game you want to have as a jiu-jitsu guy or a boxer or a wrestler. You know, you want people to move into your shots.
Yeah.
You don't want to be like reaching to hit people. You want them to just walk right into a shot. That's the
Yeah.
easiest type of shot to land.
Yeah.
So learning from someone who's lazy was
Dude.
like his whole thing. He was like, find a lazy coach.
When I was in undergrad, I was working at this lab, like a research lab in the psychology department, and there was like, for some reason, they needed like 500 spreadsheets, like cleaned up and organized. Like they all had like the same like cells that like some had to be deleted, some had to be changed, and I was like handed this task, and I was just like, there's no way I'm doing this by hand. So I literally like figured out like no like coding knowledge whatsoever, but Apple has like this like internal coding thing called, it's in what's it called, Terminal or something. I forgot I don't even know if that's what it's called. And like I like figured out how to like write this script. Oh, Apple script is what it's called. It's like it's internal JavaScript or whatever. And I figured out how to just like automate the whole thing. And then
nice.
like this task, like it took me hours to figure out how to do it, but then like I just pressed the button and it did it all for me. It was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen.
Dang.
Yeah. But that's like, but a normal person, I think like a neurotypical person, they probably would have just like done it.
Right. And that's why that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Just figuring out how to deal with it. It's not normal, so nobody else knows how to deal with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or there's less people who have it, and they don't really talk too much to each other about it. Like, hey, you got that one thing? Yeah, I got it too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, sure. Back to what you were saying, you know, like Columbine. It's like, you know, that was our first idea of mental health.
Yeah.
Those
it really
people,
was.
people struggling, like that's how you found out that you were struggling so much with mental health that you became another school shooter.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you didn't have a group to go to. You know?
Yeah.
That was like the fight club for school shooters, was just seeing each other on the news. Like, oh, I'm about 3 months away from that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's a horrible group to have to associate with. If you feel like, you know, you're dealing with something mentally, it's like, man, there's more people, but like you said, you're a pussy if you talk about it.
Right.
Back in the day.
And there's such like a variance of, you know, being like psychotic to the point of, you know, murdering innocent people.
For sure.
And like, you know, being depressed. Like it's such an extreme spread, right?
Yeah.
But then to just lump it all together is one thing. Like,
Yeah,
some
you're
guy,
like, oh God, am I
like
going to
one
shoot?
guy has
shoot
social
schools?
anxiety, you know, and you're worried about them like getting a rifle and, you know, just like slaughtering people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're scared for your, like, oh, I could possibly do that. Am I that messed up? And,
Yeah.
You know, they say that I'm like them, you know?
Right.
That's just not healthy.
Yeah. So it really is like the last few years where people are even considering mental health to be important in any way. I mean, I think that there's still a long way to go.
Oh yeah,
right. Like
absolutely.
Like I think in LA there's like a homelessness crisis that people talk about a lot, and I think that a lot of people call it a housing crisis, which I somewhat disagree with. I think at the end of the day, it's really a mental health crisis. And have you
heard of Michael Schallenberger's San Francisco?
No, what's that?
Oh, he goes into detail on it. He was just recently on Joe Rogan's podcast like last week.
I think my fiance was talking to me about
You'd love it.
Yeah.
It's the best conversation I've heard on homelessness.
Yeah.
So, and he said the same thing. It's not a housing thing. It's a mental health thing. It's more of a drug thing.
But a drug thing, like
crack and heroin, 70s, 80s.
Yeah, but like no one gets addicted to crack without having an underlying mental health issue.
True.
Right?
You're right.
Like no one's a heroin addict without battling depression, anxiety, PTSD.
Right. Because you probably know some people, and I know some people who've tried crack and haven't gotten addicted.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah.
No, that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Obviously, he goes into detail on that, but like that was kind of like, obviously, if you are dealing with some type of mental illness and then crack takes over.
Right.
It's downhill from there.
Of course. Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, addiction is ultimately just a symptom of their mental health condition. It's not a disorder to be treated in any way. And I've worked in a number of substance abuse facilities. We're actually opening up like an outpatient detox currently in our existing offices. But it's really because there's a lot of overlap, right? There's people we see who have been addicted to a lot of different drugs over the years because that was their way of coping with depression, of coping with PTSD.
Right.
It wasn't a good way of coping.
It wasn't the acceptable one, like alcohol. Right.
Yeah. It's just or in California, weed.
Right. Yeah.
But it was the way that that's just the only way that worked for them, unfortunately. But it's ultimately because there was never any resolution to a lot of these underlying things. There was never any good quality mental health care for the most part. And I think if you look at a lot of people on the street, you don't see access to good quality mental health care.
No, not at all. The homeless thing, it really hit me when I moved out here. I was just like, man, how did this happen? And it's just like, it's taken me a while to like really understand the issue.
Right.
But yeah, he brought some really good stuff in that podcast. I have to check that book out. I haven't read it yet, but I did like what his ideas were.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. Now as far as, and I can get you out of here, but as far as people going through your clinics, and coming out the other end, what has that experience been like for the majority of your patients?
I mean, it's pretty life-changing for a lot of people, especially because a lot of these treatments work so quickly, and I think a lot of people are used to things like antidepressants taking 6 weeks to start working.
Right. And your thing is 6 weeks.
Yeah, it depends on we have like different programs, right? So sometimes people stay in for longer if it's helpful for them too.
Right.
And usually if they are staying for longer than 6 weeks, it's because they're noticing a lot of changes, but they haven't plateaued and they want to keep going. But yeah, I mean, we see, honestly, like, it sounds like I'm just kind of shilling for my clinic, but we see like crazy improvements and so many people. I mean, we'll see complete remission for people who've tried like a dozen antidepressants, who've tried therapy, nothing works. I mean, that's like the common story of a person who walks in the door is like, I've tried everything, nothing works. What do I do now?
Now, for those people, when they say nothing works, nothing takes the sadness away or takes the anxiety. Well, what?
Yeah. Nothing helps my symptoms, basically.
Right. Yeah.
So commonly it'll be like nothing helps my symptoms, right? So I'm still sad. I still have no energy. I still have no motivation. I still think about killing myself all the time. I mean, that's got to be the worst, sleep. Right? On the scale of it, it's like the suicidal thoughts
have to be at the top, right?
They're there for most people. Yeah. I mean, even like a moderate depression, like you have suicidal thoughts pretty often. And it's not usually like I'm making a plan and I'm going to like put a gun in my mouth today. It's usually more on the passive end of like, God, I really could get hit by a bus right now.
Right. And
you know? And I just wouldn't care.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have all of these things, and either antidepressants didn't work, they just no resolution, or there were too many side effects, and people couldn't tolerate the side effects. Yeah. So maybe someone gained 60 pounds like I did when I tried Prozac. Maybe it caused more anxiety instead of less. So those are the two most common types of people who come in. And then once in a while, we'll have people who are just like, I don't resonate with medication. Like it doesn't, I resonate more with like a non-pharmaceutical approach. And those people end up doing quite well as well.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then when they come out, what's that conversation like? I mean, I know you mentioned earlier, like I didn't know I could be happy, or I forgot what that was like.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of like, I forgot what this is like. There's a lot of like, I'm getting back to my life now. Like I'm being a father again. I'm going back to school. I started a company. You know, it's like, because when you're so depressed for so long, your life is really on pause. Like you're going through the motions, but everything's on pause. There's no progress that's happening in your life. You're just kind of stuck. You're stuck physiologically, and you're stuck oftentimes kind of vocationally, educationally, and whatnot. So we really just see people get back to their lives, get back to their families, get back to their jobs, get back to school, and just, live their lives.
That's fascinating. I mean, I just love hearing that stuff. Now, when it comes to like someone who said they're getting back to like their family or their children, maybe back to being a father, like you said. Obviously, the depression was not allowing them to be in the moment, right? Of the interaction with their family.
Yeah.
What's like I guess the difference between the different modes of potential therapy, like ketamine, MDMA, psilocybin.
Yeah.
When you hear that.
So ketamine's the only one that's legal. Again,
absolutely. Yeah.
That's currently legal. So that's the only one that's available to most people.
I'm only asking that because I hear that from stories of anecdotes of people who have done MDMA therapy in the trials. Right. Where they say that I can get back to my family.
Yeah.
But usually it's from like an experience in the session.
Right.
Like, reimagining those memories.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just asking, like, what's the difference in the ketamine? Because you say some people talk during it.
Yeah.
Right? And I guess they're, like, reliving some thoughts or memories?
Some people talk during it. Some people are honestly just chatty.
Yeah.
They just talk about whatever comes to their mind. Some people do end up kind of reliving traumas and things like that. And sometimes they'll kind of like talk it out almost during the session.
Right.
Or they'll kind of like be reliving it. And it's really helpful having someone there, especially in those circumstances. But some people, they just can't, like talking is like too much, right? Like it's such a sensory overloaded experience that it feels too intense to talk. It feels too intense to open your eyes. And so that experience tends to be quite different qualitatively. But how they are in session doesn't necessarily translate to how well they do. So all three of those sort of phenotypes of reactions tend to do equally as well after ketamine.
Got it.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I would love to see people in my life seek this out.
Yeah.
But like with this kind of stuff, you can't make anybody do it.
Yeah.
Even though you're like, man, I feel like this could be really good for you.
Yeah. You can't pull up Pink Floyd and give Syd Barrett acid in his coffee every day.
Apparently, you can't do that. People get mad about that.
Yeah, apparently it's against the law.
These people. But yeah, man, I'm excited. I'm glad that we started talking.
Yeah.
Because we just started talking at the gym. when barely anybody was at the gym.
Yeah, 5 a.m.
Yeah. But yeah, man, it's just fascinating that you got into this, and I just recently kind of realized all the research that was going on, and it's just fascinating, man, that people, and it's funny. I talk to people, and I'll end on this. I won't keep you any longer. I'll say that in the next 20 minutes. but like people who are kind of against psychedelic therapy.
Yeah.
Maybe they're older and they have a different idea of what it is, right, from the 60s or 70s. And once they hear that, like, it's been helpful for soldiers,
right,
like, that changes everything.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, okay, well, if it's going to help them, I'm more receptive. Of learning more about it. That's interesting to me.
It's interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Soldiers. Yeah, it's an interesting topic in general.
Because we know they're not pussies.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely not. So we, it's funny. I was speaking to a friend of mine recently about how she's working with a nonprofit now, and basically, we program civilians into soldiers during boot camp, but then we don't deprogram them as a society when they get back.
We don't take them off the meds.
We don't do anything for them.
Nothing.
Unfortunately, but we especially don't like undo what boot camp did.
Right.
And I think that hopefully a lot of these therapies will have a place. It's like, I've been trying to, get in with the VA in some capacity for like years, but it's been there's so much bureaucracy that unfortunately it's really hard to get to anyone who can actually make a decision or partner with anyone in any capacity there.
I think I might be able to help you.
Okay.
I've got a client.
Oh, really?
Yeah, at the VA.
Okay.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And she's like, anything that we can do to help our vets, like, I'm down for.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. She's in Macedonia right now.
Okay.
But
Nice.
she's giving some presentation or something like that.
Is she high up there?
I don't know. I'm assuming so. She's I know that she would know who you need to talk to if it's not her.
Okay.
But yeah, that would be cool. I'll have to link you guys up.
That'd be really cool.
Well, dude, I appreciate you coming over, man, and suffering through LA traffic in an old Tesla.
It was a bitch.
Like, I don't drive old Teslas,
Yeah.
only new ones, and only in plaid mode.
Yeah, that's the way to drive them.
When you do that, it's so weird because it doesn't make a noise.
Right.
You're used to going at high speeds
And
with
hearing that
noise.
engine. Yeah.
Nothing like that, man.
Yeah.
It's like I was on the drop zone, like, the roller coaster.
Yeah.
It just drops you.
Yeah.
But I was going straight ahead.
Did you like driving it?
I didn't drive it. I
you
just sat
didn't.
there strapped in, holding onto the seat.
Yeah.
Yeah. He loved it, though. Our heads were hurting.
Because it was so fast.
Yeah, it was like a roller coaster.
You got like a mild traumatic brain injury just from the acceleration.
I got CTE now.
Yeah.
Or more of it. All right, man. We're out here. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming over, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.